I was thinking about, you know, one of the things that I hope, one of the things I'm always trying to get all of you to think more about and maybe do more is figuring out your relationship to your own practice, right? Like, where is it that eventually one of the wonderful things and hard things that happens is that rather than reaching for your yoga practice, ends up feeling more like coming home, right? Like building the fire where you're actually in a safer place or in the place that where it should begin. And part of I think one of the things that I found over the years in sharing yoga is that especially people that live with various forms of disability, their starting place is very rarely their body, right? It ends up being what they should be, what they should do, what they have to take care of, the thing they should do. Remember we've talked in the last few weeks about if your yoga practice always comes from what you should be doing, it's not going to sustain. It's not going to get organic unless you're one of those people that get highly motivated by shoulds all the time, right? But the idea of or and it's hard, especially if you have trauma in your body, right? Like that coming home to your yoga practice or starting from what precedes is a starting place, right? So I think about things like there are many different little snippets that have brought me to different appreciations of the starting place, right? But one was a koan from a long time ago. I've mentioned it multiple times. A Zen koan. If you don't think good and you don't think not good, what's your true self? Right. So like what's the space before your mind projects on what it's supposed to be? Right. Or how you're supposed to be. What's actually the experience that precedes? And the world looks like and the happenings of your life, like the fact that a car likely bounced over my chest, can look like it can take that place from you, right? No, actually. That's why you've heard me joke over the years about MC Hammer. There's a place, can't touch this. There's a place that whatever's happened, right? It can't touch this other place. But knowing that place in in your own instantiation of consciousness, in your own version, right? It's a weird thing. It's hard to claim that it's knowledge because it's not knowledge, it's an experience. Like there are lines that I think about all the time that like your yoga practice is a secret between you and in the universe. You don't have to justify anything. You don't have to prove anything to the universe. You got nothing you need to do there. Whatever you do, whatever you don't do, right? Whatever's happening, it's a secret between you and the universe. What gets hard is when you're falling in love with yoga, you think you have to make everyone else be a yoga convert or try to like justify what you're doing or try to fit it into a box. And the whole point of the practice is to get you to where things proceed. So I know we're all so used to, okay, we're going to center before class. It's like, yeah, but what if the place that precedes on some really deep levels unknowable, it can only be experienced, which means your mind is going to probably need to really quiet down because your mind's function is to judge everything and try to figure stuff out and make things good and not good. But before all that, you could even call it about the field beyond good and evil. I'll meet you there. There's Rumi coming out. I mean, a whole bunch of great thinkers have tried to, and poets have tried to get you to that place. And it's happening every time you center, if you allow it. right? It's actually quite mystical and it's unknowable. So allow. It's only a snapshot of allowing. Like I've had coffee this morning, so I can feel the vibration a little bit, right? I like it. Helps me have energy, but I still need to go wait. So you can kind of get why the yogis are telling you to soften your organs of perception, right? Your eyes, the skin on your forehead, because you're trying to get the eyes, because the eyes are always projecting outward and having inward stimulus and projecting outward in terms of interpretation. So often in centering, you might close your eyes, but you're trying to create a hollowing around where your mind is used to being so active. You're trying to create depth for the top of your spine, so your lips together and teeth slightly apart. So there's a cave-like feeling, a deepening feeling. Again, we're not even looking, we're trying to allow what precedes. I find that it helps me a lot to relax my belly, to relax my throat, to let the cave be on the inside of my mouth. Opening the backside of my, but what to what's behind me, my back body, letting it be receptive, even though it can't see, except it can receive. With it all set, start to notice a little bit more your breath. I was trying to get you to be aware and allow before you start being aware of your breath, but I'm sure a lot of you did it through your breath. But know there's a simultaneous story behind the inhalation and the exhalation of your breath, and your breath feeds it. If you want to find your midline, bring your hands into prayer. All these things to help your mind anchor in what's unknowable, not to judge it. There's the stillness and the movement. Make sure you're lifting your chest and under your collarbone. Start bringing it more into life. There is the spark of life that is you. Everything at once. Don't judge it. Prepare your mind to do yoga. Good. And then release. Lift your sternum up, drop your chin down. Activate your spine a little bit more, become a better receiver of the fluctuation and movement of your breath. Notice how it activates through your rib cage and into your spine. Expand on the inhalation, extend on the exhalation. I know when I go into what I'm doing right now, I tend to tighten the inside of my mouth. Don't undo it. Let the vitality be in your spine, not in your mind's attempt to control the inside of your spine, the inside of your mouth. Let your mind float as your spine activates. Raise your head up with closed eyes. Open your eyes. So, whole bunch of things, but remember, you're supposed to remember every class I've shared in the last like year, because I reference them all the time. So it's not a big task. But you remember when I was talking about a centering I saw from B.K. Iyengar, I watched online, and he talked about how the life force comes up through the spine, but you have to surrender the base of, or the lower part of your brain, and it's at about at the eyebrows. So when I said let your mind float while your spine activates, I didn't mean float out in the ether. I meant let it release at about your eyebrows. Now try that, right? While activating your spine. While lifting your sternum, while dropping your chin. Learn to float your intelligence in your body as your body is activating. As your body is what's guaranteeing the clarity. Coming home. All right. Raise your heads up. If you dropped them, open your eyes. Of course, everyone wants the movement, right? Because dang it, it gets too intense in there. Dang it. I'm a little bit scared in there. I am, at least. I don't know about you. If you put me right in where there's something perceived that I don't ever get to know, I only get to experience. I'm like, wait, what's going on here? What's going on here? I get, I want to reiterate the point of how often I've seen my adaptive students not know that their starting point must include their body. Take your legs wide, right? It's your body. I'm taking my legs wide. And so I'm just trying to open up. It's the body that guarantees that you live. It's movement that makes the ceasing not be overwhelming for the mind, right? It's a wonderful partnership between ceasing and movement, and it's everywhere, right? So I'm just moving around, letting there be more rhythm, getting my spine to go. Gonna wake up for the week. So I've been doing a lot of writing, and when I write a lot, my energy gets static because I'm working for words, right? So it's like, I got to remember that words don't come without the body, right? Insight comes through the body first, right? All right, so we're going to elongate some. So some version of dog pose, because we're just like cracking our knuckles, right? We're opening up spaces, right? So hands on the table or hands on your thighs, right? Elbows on your thighs, however you're going to do it, right? But I want there to be multiple directions traveling through your spine. So right now, my hands are on the table. I'm hitting down through my sitting bones. I'm extending through my spine. I'm broadening across my collarbones. I'm broadening across my sacrum. So I'm trying to activate my spine, but then I want to make sure I'm extending from my inner groin to my inner knee down to my inner heels, because I want the extension of my spine to activate my legs. I want the grounding of my legs to activate my spine. There's no such thing as a one-way street in yoga. And I'm breathing. Now I can keep adding asana, like lengthening the inner edge of my bicep, opening my palms, pressing down through my index finger, rolling my upper arms towards the ceiling. All these things are congruent. That's why they're instructions. I just forget to do them. Good, and then release. Elbows on the table or on your thighs, right? I want you to drop your shoulder blades down, activate out through the elbows, lift up your sternum, find your sitting bones, and extend through your legs. What? I'll say it again. I want you to ground your bones, lengthen out through your elbow, drop your shoulder blades down, spread between the shoulders, spread across the sacrum, extend down through your legs, and lift your sternum. Add the lifted chest to the activation in your body. Good, and then release. One of the statements that I found to be amazingly insightful for me was by William Prottengeyer in a yoga class. He said, the silence within you is never in conflict with the chaos outside of you. He's talking about Shavasana. But that's even true in a yoga pose. All the actions you're doing and all the movements is never in conflict with the level of coming home to what precedes. They're never in conflict. And that's part of why asana is one of the limbs, right? Inhale, take your arms up. So there's a level of quiet and stillness in the middle of movement. It's right in there. It's waiting for you. Right? It's whether you can receive it while you're activating your will. Inhale, lift up, exhale, revolve. There's a much bigger show than your movement. There's a much larger frame. Good, and then come on back to center. Feel the center. In fact, I got so like far deep in the energy of that twist, I'm going to move around a little bit because I want to start fresh on the other side, right? Inhale, take the other arm up. Exhale, revolve, right? Ground, find the place. When I ground, I can know that the stillness is with me. If I move too fast, I don't have the ceasing as part of my pose. Remember, I'm coming home to the stillness, to what precedes. And then I start to activate. Inhale, lift up, exhale, revolve. Again, we're still just trying to wake up our spines now. Right? We're not like cranking a twist. This isn't necessarily a twisting class. We're just trying to activate the life in our midline. Good, and then come on back to center. Turns out that the midline is unknowable in the same sense of what precedes in centering, right? Back to dog pose, right? Elongating. I'm going to go a little bit deeper into dog pose this time, right? Because I'm gonna try to come to life in the pose, right? I'm gonna get everything set, and then I'm gonna activate. And I'm going to be so grateful that my body is here to express the activation. I'm lengthening my spine. I'm trying to get my spine to go in every direction, even though my body is guiding it through my limbs. I'm broadening across my sacrum. I'm broadening the space between my shoulder blades. I'm activating down my arms. I'm feeling the whole room while I'm centered in my spine. I'm feeling my legs. I'm being active and breathing. Good, and then release. Not that I necessarily subscribe to this type of language, but I can hear the line that I've heard Bika Sangar write and say, my body is my temple, my asanas are my prayers, right? Not that I necessarily has to be praying, but like you have this thing that's sacred. And then when you start to get more aligned with the universe, maybe that's a form of praying. Use whatever words you want, right? But something important is happening, right? It's whether you can appreciate what you take for granted when you move, right? It's amazing. Isn't it funny that we don't spend more time, I'm taking my legs wide, more time appreciating what's here rather than striving for what's not had yet, right? So I'm hitting down and rising up. I'm trying to get my spine active. So I'm pushing down on my thigh. I'm hitting my forearm into my leg, and I'm activating my spine skyward. Except because I've done enough yoga, I know when I activate this way, I want something to drop towards the earth at the same time. Last week, we called that a mist, right? We tried to keep it more like water, a mist going down as I activate up. Because no matter what direction I'm moving, there's a wake in the other direction. So I'm gonna go the other way, right? And someone really smart like Newton said, every action has an opposite action, right? An equal opposite action. So I think I'm happening this way, but something's also happening in my wake. My poses are never just in the present, right? They're never just under my control, but I'm hitting down towards the earth, rising up through my spine and trying to connect to the mist that's dropping through my legs as my spine activates. So it's interesting how you teach standing poses. There's a lot of different ways. None of them are necessarily wrong, right? But in some ways, you're trying to learn, I'm going back and forth now. In some ways, often you teach a beginner how to really work their legs so their spine gets to receive the work, right? So the activation of the action actually of the legs feeds the spine. So you can imagine that, I'm bringing my legs back together. That's a little bit hard for me to do as a paralyzed guy, right? I don't get to activate my legs muscularly and have it feed my spine. So I got to start wondering how to do it differently, right? So I try to learn how to do it in my arms. right? In what I can control more. So put your hands on your desk or on your thighs again, right? And you've heard all these things. I keep trying to show you the same thing over and over again because that's all my practice is. I do the freaking same lesson over and over again. And I wonder if I can learn different things because I trust that yoga is infinite. So I can keep learning infinite amounts of stuff from the same things. Hands are on the table. You've heard me say this line, learn how to bring the muscle towards the bone, right? Muscle towards the bone, right? So what does that mean? Well, see if you can squeeze your tricep into your humerus bone and lengthen your bicep at the same time, while at the same time, extend down to the index mound, right? These are all instructions you've had, right? So that's the action of the working the arms. What's the reaction? What's the mist that floats through the rest of the body from an action in your arms? Remember, I'm trying to study standing poses as a paralyzed guy. What the hell is he talking about? Talking about smack, right? All right. So I'm learning to bring the muscle towards the bone of my arms, and I can tell you to go up this way, down this way. I can give a whole bunch of instructions to do that. Does anyone feel your chest kind of lift when you do all that stuff? And then if you hit down through your sitting bones, all of a sudden the pose starts happening. But can you feel how the work in your arms starts to initiate awareness in your legs? Can anyone feel that without activating your legs? Nod your head and say yes a little bit. For God's sakes, help me out here. So now I'm a paralyzed guy with paralyzed legs, and I have to learn how my legs can feed my spine. So I'm starting by learning how my arms can feed my legs. And I'm going to open to things I don't understand and I don't know, so I can start to reverse the direction from my legs into my spine. This is what it means to be an adaptive yoga student, right? You make shit up. You practice. You trust stuff. You go on adventures, right? So now I'm going to read the muscle, and I've told you things. The muscle to the bone is one of the ways to move. Remember, I even told you stories like this. When a senior Angai teacher whispered to me, realize the space between the muscles and the bones, right? So I'm trying to get you to realize that in your arms. Why realize the space between the muscles and the bones? Because it touches prana. Because all of a sudden you get to be more in the current of what prana was actually doing the whole time through your body. So I'm like feeling what that feels like. Okay, so I'm getting that, right? Good. And then release. So now I'm going to go back to this thing about, again, we're still going to drop the mist this way, right? So I'm going to take my legs wide again. So we're going back and forth because don't ever get bored, for God's sakes. It's way too wondrous, right? So my legs are wide. I'm going down towards the earth. I'm going hitting down through my base, right? Lifting my spine. But now instead of just pushing straight down, I'm going to try to start the direction of my sitting bones going down, right? Remember, we're just working on standing poses here, right? So hitting sitting bones going down, rising my spine up, right? But making them, watching it not just mist, now trying to activate with the mist as my spine lifts, right? Like I said last week, we're around a whole bunch of revolving standing poses right now, right? Not a whole bunch, but about 3 of them, right? So we're going this way. It could be Trikonasana, could be, yeah, I don't want to get into all this stuff. So like, right, could be Parsvakonasana, could be revolved Parsvakonasana, could be revolved Trikonasana. There's a whole bunch of things happening here, right? Good, and then release. The thing about teaching a standing person, they can't feel the mist until their legs are stronger, until they're on balance, right? So we're going the other way. And again, we're taking the activation of our spine and being part of not just the action, but the receiving of the reaction of the activation of the spine to watch the mist. But instead of just watch the mist, I want you to hit down through your sitting bones and extend out, right? Now, what's interesting to me, when I do this, we're gonna go to the first side now, right? When I lean this way, at first, at least, even though gravity is going this way on the leg I'm going into, I have an easier time activating down through the back leg, right? So now I'm doing this, I'm lengthening up, and I'm going to extend as my spine goes this way. I just take this for granted. It's like lame of my yoga student, but I can just trust it here. And I can extend through the back leg and rise my chest even more and turn, right? And as I turn, I start to feel changes in my legs, right? And then come out of the turn. So rather than in a twisting standing pose, people think that you're adding layers by twisting the belly up towards the ceiling. If you know Parsvakonasana or Trikonasana or, whatever. You think that, oh, now I got a twist. No, in fact, the twist is trying to bring you into your midline, right? So now you're going this. Remember, I talked last week about the shoulder blades coming in. And so all this stuff. So now I'm going this way. I'm pressing down here. I'm knowing that I'm looking for the miss. So I'm starting to activate my sitting bones down and realize that I can not this side's a little bit different, but I can extend better through the back leg as my spine goes the opposite way. I'm trying to follow the opposite reaction that comes from leaning this way as I'm activating my spine this way, because that's what's happening. Good, and then release. But my mind gets all caught up in that physical action going one way, because my mind is not the best receiver, right? So I'm going to go back and forth now. So now, how do we get the direction going the other way? So we're still back to trying to figure out arms to the spine, to the legs. We're still trying to figure out how my legs are going to go to my spine, because that's how beginning students that are traditional students need to have to learn. They have to get their legs working right before their spine. You and I have to do it differently when you're seated, right? So how do you get the receiving sensation from the legs to the spine? Well, I try all sorts of tricks, right? I'm always trying to work on shit like this. Those of you that can activate your legs, you got an advantage and a disadvantage, right? I want you to get your bones. So I want you to put your hands on your knees. I want you to start playing. First, I want you to hit back on each knee. So pushing, articulating, they call it articulating your femur bone back into your hip socket. Right? And of course, that's going to rise your chest and your mind's going to follow the drama, right? But I want you to pay more attention to the change of reference from your legs that makes your chest wants to lift, right? Now I'm going to have to really surrender, soften my brain as I push in through my knees up and raise my chest. I still have to let the mist go down to my feet, right? So I'm trying to get grounding from my legs to my spine. Then I'm going to release. Here's where rhythm is going to start to help, right? If I start doing a little bit more rhythmically. So as I ground into my legs and respond in kind more sensually with my spine, right? Right. And I start practicing this, like, okay, through my legs, response in my spine. Through my legs, response through the bones of my legs, which is very different. Like learning how to follow prana through bones is different than activating muscles through bone, right? Muscles with prana, right? So those of you that can just, and I don't know, I haven't done it for like 45 years, but so if you're sitting, if you can come back to neutral, And if you can, and I would watch my adaptive students in wheelchairs try to do this. I'd have them push down through their foot pedals if they could do it physically, right? Push down through your foot pedals, activate your legs and try to receive something into your spine. Right now, what would happen is when people would push physically through their foot pedals, they'd fall back on the backside of their sitting bones. So this is a disadvantage you have as being able to move your legs, because you end up pushing too hard here and not having your spine receive as much, right? Okay, so now that's why it's going to be more effective to feed your spine if you press down through your heels into the floor. Try that. Push down through your heels, find your sitting bones, and raise your spine. So I'm doing it too now. I'm just not being able to do it physically, right? I'm finding the difference between just pushing physically hard into my foot pedals or into the floor, right? And figuring out a way to make sure that the energy travels from pushing down, quote, pushing down, some of you can do it physically, up my shin, back into my spine, and then raising my spine. So I got to figure out how to do that. And one of my guides is trying to figure out what it felt like when I worked my arms to feed my spine. I'm doing it in the opposite direction. Now, as I'm doing that and I'm getting my own sense of rhythm, now I'm going to do that as I push on my own knees. And then release. So now I'm adding another level of physical reference. We're just working on standing poses here. It's really hard in a seated standing pose to use the ground, to take advantage of the floor, because we can't push easily against it. All right, so I'm getting that sensation, right? Okay. So now I'm going to take one leg wide. I'm going to use gravity. See, and the thing is, even a traditional student would be using changes in gravity, right? So now, as I go and turn this way a little bit, and I move my spine here, and I'm grounded here, instead of just pushing down into the floor, I'm going to push down the floor, receive the floor from the ceasing part of your brain, from a softening brain, and let the grounding of the foot lengthen and rise my spine. So instead of pushing this way, I am still pushing that way, but I'm trying to allow for another layer coming up from my leg into my spine. Now, if I'm following this, you can see why the yogis are wanting you to turn your spine up towards the sky. But don't just turn your spine up towards the sky, right? Independently of trying to get energy to come from the floor to you as you're pushing into the floor. So this turn of the belly, which students just miss when I'm teaching traditional students, is actually to get more out of the floor, right? So I'm pushing into the floor, and I have to go to the ceasing and soften my brain to receive from the floor through my bones. Lengthen my spine because I'm on a two-way street, and then release. We're not even to the arms yet. What the hell? This is gonna, I'm getting thirsty. I don't know about you, but holy cow. My core of my energy body is like working. So now I'm going the other way. Whew, I'm almost out of breath. So I'm going to pause a little bit because I was just working hard there. Right. So now I'm going to go, right. All of these things. So now I'm knowing that I went through a whole cycle of pushing this way. Now I want to get the back leg and keep extending into the floor down as I raise my spine, but now let the floor inform the lift in my spine. So I'm going in both directions, right? And then release. So we're going to do it again. And now I want you to more actively, when you start to rotate your belly up towards the ceiling, when we go the second time, I want you to realize that is to open the two-way street between the floor coming through the spine and between your spine going into the floor. Right? Here we go, right? So I'm not just pushing for the floor, I'm trying to then push through the floor, but then allow Shavasana to come up through the floor, to come up through the ceasing of my pose. And then follow it through your, so I can catch my head being too far forward, because I'm following the floor's guidance for my spine. Breathe. Good, and then release. So if you remember, last week, I was talking about, in the standing pose part of it, maybe it was 2 weeks ago, I don't know. I was talking to you about when you're leaning this way, how important tucking the bottom shoulder blade is. Right? When you let it bow out, your pose deadens. When you tuck it under, right, something happens. Now, so when you tuck it under, it helps energy go down through your legs. Now I'm asking you to notice that and receive from the floor. Right? Let it go in two directions. It's a letting, it's not a doing. So what traditional students miss. Okay, so like now I'm tucking my bottom, I'm leaning over this first side. We're gonna go to the other side in a second. And I'm getting it down through the floor, but now I've got to reverse, keep doing that action. Know that there's another dimension where I can receive in the other direction. Breathe. And we're still not to the arms. What the hell? Good, and then release. Ooh, so now we got to go to the other side and tuck the other shoulder blade. I just got it. There's I can't remember what these are right now. I'm so far into yoga, but it's stuck to the bottoms of my foot because it was on the floor. A stick, what is that called? A sticky note. Okay, so now, or do we have to do the other side, right? No, we did the other side. Did we do this side already? Help me. The sticky note got me, right? Okay, so now we're going to go back to the first side. We're going to try to add the arms. But I don't know, maybe you haven't been taxed by the practice so far. I'm not paying attention to time at all. Where are we at time? Oh, I got tons of time. 9 minutes. We're fine. Aha! Probably not, right? Okay. Taking the leg out. Leaning it over. Right? Trying to coordinate. I'm going to go into the pose more passively, into the shape. Right? And then I'm going to start to activate the multi-directions, right? The extend down first, raise up first, let the mist happen, follow the mist, extend down, turn the spine to get my midline congruent with it. Take the arm up as an expression. Now, depending on which version of the standing pose we're doing, you can take your arm over your head, trying to bring it into the midline, or you can keep it out here for balance, right? When you go here over your head, Biggest Anger says this becomes the brain of the pose. You have to really get that bottom shoulder blade to tuck in and rotate the belly up towards the ceiling to press through your legs. But remember, we're trying to receive from the floor. Breathe. Ooh, there's changes in my spine I can make. Ooh, I forgot to lift my chest. It's a whole bunch of things. Bethany, for God's sake, straighten your arm. Not up to the ceiling, over your head. There. And then come on back. This is part of a Konasana. Okay, who cares? It's called side flank pose. All right, so we're going to go the other way. Got all this stuff that we've been earning the entire class, right? Bones and actions and figuring out how the floor can feed the spine, how the spine can go through to the floor. All these things are in play, right? Trying to get my spine, realizing instead of the twist being an add-on, the twist is coming home to the midline, right? The belly roll towards the ceiling to actually find my legs. So my legs can find the floor, and then I can reverse direction to feel through my spine from my legs. I'm going to pause here for a second and always use the ceasing where I can to realize what's happening. Then when I've got it all going, I'm going to take the arm up, right? Now you can stay here, right? Or you can decide to submerge your arm into the midline again, right? And then really it makes more work in the spine. Parsvakonasana is harder than Trikonasana, right? Because the spine has to be even more active. But as you turn your belly up towards the ceiling to get your spine online, make sure you receive from the ground. It's hard. Good. And then open by taking your arm up. And then come on up. Bring your legs together. So I would say that standing poses, Bika Sengar will say, they're more analytic. Yes. And they're not as so much fun. They're kind of like cod liver oil. Taking some medicine that doesn't always taste great, but opens out. It's like the warming up drills to get relationships between earth and your spine in both directions, so you can do all the other asanas. It's part of why Bika Sengar starts beginners with standing poses, except there's nothing beginning about standing poses, especially when you try to figure out how to do them seated. So I'm bouncing around a little bit so I don't get caught in the world of being too analytic and too focused, right? So I'm trying to have a little bit of fun, more fun, before I go into Shavasana, right? I'm just like I'm moving around, even visiting some of the parts of the poses, but I'm doing it in more rhythm rather than with so much intensity, because I don't want Shavasana to only feed my intensity. I want it to feed my lightness too. I'm not trying to dispel the intensity. I'm trying to balance it. Another line from Light on Life that I keep turning over as a mystery, right? Extension requires your attention, but expansion is consciousness. Bika Sengar. I'm grateful that he put down some breadcrumbs for us to hear and to follow. Inhale, lift up. Exhale, take the arm over, take the arm behind you. A gentle twist, right? A lighter twist, because we're kind of revisiting some of the rotate the belly up towards the ceiling. That's actually a really intense center core twist. You do that, right? So we're visiting it more playfully now, right? Other arm up, other arm turns, right? I'm just gonna turn my spine a little bit and go, yeah, it doesn't have to be so serious. Get to have lightness in there, right? I'm gonna visit dog pose quickly, right? Not a hard one, just trying to like remember that there are many configurations my body can go into to receive the life force in my spine. oh yeah, then my arms can feed my legs, and all of a sudden I can feel the whole class, and I'm going like, yeah, it's still with me. Good, and then come on out of that, and then we gotta find some symmetry. Start to take the intense edges off the mind and the brain so that it's empty spaces in my body, not just the fatiguing space. Fatigue tends to color the empty spaces in your body so you can like know where they are. It's like a faint color, right? And you're just using that fatigue a little bit, the intensity. So when this shavasana, when you totally let in the sensation of your chair holding you up, it penetrates or it nourishes in the empty spaces. You want your surrender to hold up your body and to lighten the empty spaces. To follow that, you start to soften the inside of your mouth, lips together, teeth slight apart. You relax around the temples, the skin on the forehead, because you're following and trying to be congruent with the nourishment and the support coming into the empty spaces. Goodness, there's a hum here. It was here the whole time. Feel your breath. Allow that the silent sound of the universe might be Om. Be grateful. Start to bring yourself back. Slightly deeper inhalation, slightly longer exhalation. Thank your body. It's keeping you alive. You're bringing yourself back. Open the top of your spine. Maybe that's done by very gently letting the outsides of your mouth go up towards the ceiling, but let it mirror the center of your chest. Have your spine smile. When you're ready, open your eyes. Your spine was here before your eyes, by the way. Right? It's too bright. It's bright over here. Close your eyes and open it again. Open them again. For those of you that have had more of a traditional yoga practice before the onset, so I've never fully been able to do standing poses. I've only done them from a seated position, from laying down in a seated position, but I kind of hope that those of you that have reference kind of can feel that we just did standing poses. And there's a fatigue that comes from standing poses, right? But let it be yummy, all right? Let it, don't forget about the sunshine and shit, right? And if you struggle to do this practice, that's okay. Me too. It was not so easy. All right, everybody. The plan is to be back here next week. And I think it's kind of when I started up, um, um, I hope that on some level, without being too barfy, why I started with that song is that I hope that classes and mind body solutions is kind of the quote safe place you can come to start your exploration, right? And that it's kind of the fire that allows you to go back. But what I really want is that to be your yoga practice with and without mind body solutions. All right, everybody, have a good week, right? We shall return.